Beans and other things. Do you know beans? Now don't laugh at this question, for maybe you do not. Beans are very interesting things. Climbing beans, for instance, are left handed. I am sure you did not know that you had been eating left handed beans all your life. One day, as I sat in the country home looking out the window, I asked the farmer if he knew that the beans in his garden were left handed. He replied, "You may be a good doctor, but what you know about farming wouldn't cover a postage stamp." "That may be so," I replied, "but if you will go out and examine those tall bean vines which I see in your garden, I believe you will see that they are all growing up the pole from left to right." He felt sure that I was mistaken, but went out at once to prove that I was. I watched him as he went from vine to vine and noted the unusual expression on his face. Sure enough, all his vines were left-handed. One of my friends unwound 5 or 6 vines and then wound them up the opposite way around the pole to see what would happen. And all these vines died of a broken heart because they could not have their own way. Unbelieving men who occupy prominent positions in educational circles can give no explanation whatever of instinct in nature. We know that the bean does climb this way, but we cannot understand it. Now, hops climb a pole from right to left. They are right handed. Why do they always climb that way? What professor can explain this simple fact of nature? The wise man knows that God has done it. The honest man will admit that only God could do it. Another miracle is seen in the early life of the bean. Shortly after it is planted, the gardener will go out to inspect the garden, and here and there little broken places appear in the crusty ground. The clods are being pushed up by some power from beneath. The farmer will lift one of those clods, which may even weigh a pound or more, which is quite hard, only to find beneath it 2 soft, beautiful green leaves, soft as velvet. On each leaf is half a bean. The bean is the father and the mother, and it is to display them to the world and to show with pride what a lovely father and mother it took to make such a beautiful new plant. Now, how can these 2 soft leaves push up a hard, heavy clod? These leaves are so delicate and tender that if they were laid on the table, an ordinary piece of blotting paper would crush them flat. Where do they get the power that is revealed in this phenomenon? This is one of those miracles of God that cannot be explained or understood by man. We see that it happens, but we do not know how it happens. And God can do miracles in your life if you will only let Him. Strange and enjoyable experiences are given to those who walk with God. Have you noticed that all watermelons which show stripes always have an even number of stripes? I have examined dozens of them in the field and in the store without ever finding a single melon with an odd number of stripes. Oranges, grapefruit, lemons, and tangerines always have an even number of segments or sections. Once in a while, you'll find a false septum found in a fruit, but upon examining it closely, you will find that it is growing within a regular segment. Bananas have a regular formation on the stalk. The lowest row or hand is always an even number of bananas. The next hand above it has one banana less than the odd number. The next row or hand has one less, and so on to the top of the bunch. When our Lord said that the harvest would be gathered 30-fold, 60-fold, and 100, He was not carelessly expressing a fact. All the increase of grain is in even numbers. The cob of corn has an even number of rows and also an even number of grains upon its surface. An even number of silks form the tassel on the end of the corn cob. Each stalk of wheat bears an even number of grain. This is true of rye, oats, and barley. I have counted the seeds on many stalks of bluegrass and always found an even number. I am led to believe that everything that bears seed produces its seed in even numbers. Even flowers bloom and close the bloom at regular hours, day and night. One botanist asserted that if he was given the right kind of soil and temperature and moisture, he would plant a variety of flowers from which he could tell the time of day or night by observing which flowers were open and which were closed. Have you ever been impressed with the fact that flowers which bloom at night are nearly always fragrant. What a wonderful perfume fills the house when the night blooming flower opens up her beauties to the assembled members of the family. How fragrant it is. No amount of trickery on the part of man will prevail upon this plant to open its mysterious doors in the daylight. The moonflower is a voluntary fragrance, laden the night air with the story of its loveliness, and greets the neighbors for blocks around through their open windows. The sweet graces of the Christian life often come out of the darkest shadows in human experience. Do you think that God was very wise and also kind when he provided that cherry should grow on a tree and watermelon should grow on the ground? How would you like their order reversed? The farmer would be put to no end of trouble as well as danger if the watermelons grew on trees. He would have to put a fence around each tree to keep the children and also the chickens from going underneath its branches, lest they be killed by the falling of the fruit. All of this would add to the expense of melons. God does everything wisely and well, and we should worship him for his goodness. It is not strange that the roots of a tree seem to have brains. They seem to have drawn irresistibly to water. They will run around the side of a cistern until they find a crack and then will call all their neighbors and friends to crawl in with them and enjoy the water. They will travel along the sides of a sewer pipe seeking an entrance, or a sides of a creek finding an entrance. Having found the smallest opening, they will crush their way through in such volume as to completely stop the flow of water, necessitating great expense for the repair. All life comes from Jesus Christ. He created every plant and gave each its own instinct and nature. Have you let him have your life?